It was just after midnight when the flashing red and blue lights pierced through the darkness, cutting across the quiet suburban street. The hum of idling engines, the crackle of radio chatter, and the slow, deliberate movement of a heavily armed police team signaled something big was about to go down. A squad of officers in tactical gear crept toward the sprawling mansion, a house far grander than any in the neighborhood. They had a warrant. They had intel. And they were convinced they had their target. What they didn't have was the truth. The SWAT team had been briefed. This house, a beacon of wealth and success, allegedly belonged to a high-level drug trafficker. According to an anonymous tip, the suspect had used shell companies to hide illicit activities under the guise of a perfectly legitimate business. Authorities claimed they had undeniable proof: money laundering, drug shipments, offshore accounts. Everything pointed to the mansion. What made this raid even more urgent? A supposed fugitive had been seen entering the property just hours earlier. With weapons drawn and adrenaline surging, the officers positioned themselves at the front and back entrances. A single command was given: go. Within seconds, the silence was shattered. The front door was battered down. Officers flooded inside, barking orders, sweeping rooms, securing occupants. The family inside woke up in sheer terror. A woman's scream echoed through the grand hallway. A man in his early 40s, dressed in silk pajama pants and a loose t-shirt, was immediately forced to the ground, his face pressed against the polished marble floor. Children's cries filled the air as armed officers yanked open bedroom doors, dragging confused and terrified family members from their beds. But as they began detaining the occupants, something felt off. This wasn't the kind of reaction they expected from criminals. Where were the weapons, the stash of illicit cash, the security detail expected in a drug kingpin's home? Instead, they found family photos, diplomas, trophies, a framed picture of the man and woman standing next to former U.S. presidents. And then, one officer entered a study filled with bookshelves, plaques, and awards. A nameplate on the desk caught his eye. His stomach dropped. The police chief standing by the command vehicle outside received an urgent radio call. "Sir, we have a situation." The officers inside had made a terrible mistake. The man lying face down on the floor, hands zip-tied behind his back, was no criminal. He was a federal judge. Not just any judge. A high-ranking African-American federal judge known for his relentless pursuit of justice. A man who had exposed corruption in law enforcement just months prior. The house wasn't a front for illegal activity. It was the home of one of the most powerful legal minds in the country. And now, half a dozen heavily armed officers had stormed in, traumatized his wife and children, and thrown him to the ground. The realization sent a ripple of panic through the ranks. The team leader, already sweating, turned to his men. "Get him up, now!" Officers scrambled to undo the zip ties, helping the judge to his feet, stammering explanations. A mistake, a misunderstanding, a mix-up with the warrant. The judge's face was stone cold as he rubbed his wrists. His wife, shaking with rage, demanded answers. His children, still in their pajamas, clung to her. One officer tried to explain, his voice wavering. "Sir, we were given bad intel." But the judge was already shaking his head. "No," he said quietly. "This was intentional." And then, just as the team thought the worst had passed, the judge turned to his wife. "Call the Attorney General. Now." The officers exchanged panicked glances. They had raided the home of a man with the power to destroy careers, expose corruption, and bring entire agencies under investigation. And he wasn't going to let this go. Within minutes, phone calls were being made at the highest levels of government. A scandal was unfolding before their eyes. And somewhere, in the depths of a hidden office, the person who orchestrated this raid realized their plan had just backfired. Horribly. The real question was, who wanted the judge silenced? The mansion was silent, except for the faint ringing of a phone on speaker. The judge's wife clutched her phone, her fingers trembling as the call connected. A deep voice answered. "Madam, it's late. What's going on?" The judge stepped forward, his voice controlled but ice cold. "This is an emergency. We have a major situation." The officers stood frozen, awaiting their fate as the judge explained what had just happened. A moment of silence passed. Then the voice on the phone said 3 words that sent a chill through the entire room. "Get out. Now." Outside, the officers' radios crackled to life. "All units, disengage immediately. Retreat to command." The SWAT team leader looked at his men, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, they filed out of the house, their boots echoing through the hallway. The front door slammed shut behind them, leaving behind a family still shaking from the horror of what had just occurred. But the judge wasn't about to let them off so easily. He turned to his wife. "Lock every door, no one comes back in." Then he reached for his own phone and dialed a private number. The person on the other end picked up immediately. "It's happening," the judge said. "They finally made their move." A pause. Then the voice replied, "Then it's time we do the same." Meanwhile, inside the SWAT command vehicle parked down the block, a different kind of chaos was unfolding. The police chief, his face pale and covered in sweat, was on his own frantic call. "Who authorized this warrant?" he barked. "I want names, now." The response on the other end was hesitant. "Sir, the warrant wasn't filed through official channels. Someone bypassed the system." The chief's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a setup. And someone wanted the judge out of the way. The judge wasted no time. He pulled out a folder from his study, one he had been keeping for months. Inside were documents, transcripts, and internal memos. They all pointed to something bigger, something that connected high-ranking officials, corrupt officers, and a clandestine operation that had been running for years. It was a case he had been building in secret, and now, it seemed, someone was willing to kill to make sure it never saw the light of day. The next morning, the judge met with an old ally, an independent journalist known for exposing corruption at the highest levels. They sat inside a dimly lit diner, both glancing over their shoulders every few minutes. The journalist took the folder, flipping through the documents, his eyes widening with every page. "This is enough to take down half the department," he whispered. "But it's not just them. Look at this name." The judge leaned in, his expression hardened. It was a name he had suspected all along. The mayor. The very person who had championed a war on crime and personally funded the expansion of the city's tactical police unit. But why would the mayor be involved in a fabricated raid on his home? Then the journalist slid another document across the table, a classified memo from months earlier. The judge read it once, then twice. His pulse quickened. This wasn't just about him. This went deeper, because according to this document, the judge wasn't the only target. Other names were listed, other powerful figures, and one of them had already gone missing. Realizing he was in far more danger than he had thought, the judge took immediate action. He called the Attorney General's office, but instead of reassurance, he was met with an unsettling response. "Judge, I'm going to be honest with you. We can't protect you." A silence stretched between them. Then, quietly, the voice on the other end said, "They have people everywhere." The line went dead. Back at his home, the judge's wife was packing a suitcase for the kids when she heard something outside. A vehicle. No sirens this time. She peered through the window and her heart stopped. A black SUV was parked across the street. Not police, not reporters, something worse. She grabbed her phone and dialed her husband's number. He picked up on the first ring. "They're here," she whispered. The judge's mind raced. They were moving faster than he expected. He gritted his teeth. "Take the kids and get out, now." He didn't wait for her response. He ended the call and turned to the journalist, urgency in his voice. "We don't have time. Get this to the press. No matter what happens to me, get this out there." The journalist nodded and grabbed the folder, slipping it into his bag. But before they could leave, the door to the diner swung open. A man in a dark suit entered. He wasn't carrying a badge, but he didn't need one. The look in his eyes said it all. They had found him. The judge locked eyes with the man. Then, slowly, he stood up. The journalist hesitated. "Judge," the judge held up a hand. "Go. Now." The man in the suit smirked. "Brave move, but you already know how this ends." The judge exhaled. Then, with steady hands, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. A single tap. The screen lit up, showing that the call was already connected. On the other end, a voice spoke. "We've got it. It's live." The man in the suit paled. The judge gave him a slow, knowing smile. "Check the news." Just as he said those words, news alerts began flooding phones across the country. Breaking. Massive police corruption scandal. Uncovered. The truth was out. And now, there was no turning back.